NASA TV, Facebook Live, Ustream, wherever you are watching around the world. Welcome to the very first live recording of Houston, We Have a Podcast. If you're unfamiliar with the podcast, this is where we bring in the experts, NASA scientists, engineers, astronauts, all the folks that have the coolest information, the stuff you really want to know, right on the show and talk about everything NASA. And today is the very first live episode, the very first time you're seeing us on camera, but also what makes this episode very special is it's the first time that we don't have our guest right here in the studio, let alone on the planet. Today we're going to be talking to Jack Fischer aboard the International Space Station, and I cannot do this alone. So with me today I have a veteran of Houston We Have a Podcast and also my co-host today, Dan Hewitt. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, it's real good to be back. I was on the first episode, and I'm not the expert. We are talking to the expert in space today. It's super exciting, and again, just wrap your mind around that. We're about to talk to somebody in outer space. I mean,
yeah.
How cool is that?
This is crazy. I mean, we're looking at him right now, getting set up. This is crazy. I mean, for me, this is my very first time talking to somebody in space.
That's right. Gary's newer here, so he hasn't had the privilege. I've been here a little bit longer, and I've done it maybe once or twice still, but it's really exciting. It makes you a little bit nervous. But it's really cool to live in a time where we have the capabilities to talk to somebody who's in outer space, who's flying around us at 17,000 miles an hour. I mean, one of the coolest examples I can think of that happening, and it shows you just how far we've come. I mean, it used to be you needed satellite dishes and technology and that weighed millions of pounds, all these things just to talk to somebody, a few hundred miles away. And now you can talk to somebody in space on a cell phone. That actually happened to us once. We were over in Kazakhstan, and we had just watched one of the crews launch to the International Space Station, and it had been a couple of hours, so they were almost docked, and we were heading to an old theater in Baikonur to go watch the actual docking and the crew members get there. And one of my colleagues' phones rang, and he answered it, and you could just see his face light up. And it was just a real short conversation. Oh, yeah, no, that sounds great. Sounds cool. Yeah, we'll definitely use that. That was it. He hung up, and he said, that was the commander of the International Space Station. He just called me on my cell phone to tell me how he was setting up a camera to watch the crew members come on board. So, I mean, just that blew my mind because we were just in this remote part of the planet, and you can get a phone call from somebody in space. It's just so incredible that we're living in this time, and we're about to talk to somebody in space. And if you can't tell, I'm really excited, and I know Gary is too.
Yeah, very, very true. It's just crazy. You could pick up a box, and then literally it is space calling. I've heard stories of all astronauts calling pizza joints and ordering pizza for a colleague whose birthday it was or something like that. It's just it's the most insane thing to think about. But okay, so today we're talking with somebody in space, Jack Fischer. Let's talk a little bit about him. Who is this guy?
So Jack Fischer is one of the flight engineers for Expedition 52. He's been on board the International Space Station since April when he launched with the Russian cosmonaut Fyodor Yurchikhin. Jack is one of the relatively newer astronauts in the Corps. He was selected back in 2009, and this is his first space flight. So this is his first time in space, and he's been up there for a couple of months now. He's got a STEM background like all of the astronauts do, degrees in aeronautical engineering and aeronautics and astronautics, a lot of A words in there. And he went to MIT, so he's got a pretty nice resume to make him an astronaut. But he was also in the Air Force. He's an Air Force colonel with 3,000 flight hours, more than 45 different aircraft, and he worked in a whole bunch of different jobs before he ever flew into space. And all the astronauts do that. They're either supporting different technical programs here at NASA. Jack was a Capcom, so he was one of the people who actually talks to astronauts every single day.
Oh, wow.
So, for people like them talking to somebody in space, it's their job. It's kind of, it's old hat, and for us, it's super unique. But he's done all of those things, and now he's been on board for the last couple of months. And he's been doing everything from spacewalking to science to capturing, visiting spacecraft, kind of the whole gamut of stuff.
Unbelievable. Okay, so he's now he's got that experience, right? He's got not only the flight time just in planes, but now he's got flight time, traveling 250 miles above the Earth really fast. So So how were his spacewalks? What's that?
Yeah, so he did 2 spacewalks, and every astronaut will tell you that spacewalks are one of the most unique, one of the most dynamic things they get to do. It's kind of one of the coolest things about being in space a lot of times. And he did 2 back in May. One, they just replaced a component on the outside, and the other one was something we called an unplanned spacewalk, where something broke, and they had to go outside and replace it. And so he did both of those with Peggy Whitson, who's been up there with him the whole time. He affectionately refers to her as the Space Ninja. She is the all-time record holder for American astronauts for time in space, so definitely a good person to have up there with you on your first trip.
Awesome. Well, okay, so we are going to be talking to Jack Fischer here in just a few minutes. If you are tuning in on Facebook Live, we are actually monitoring the questions right here and going to answer them as they come along, maybe even send a couple up to Jack once we get started here. So we have a couple coming in already. We have folks checking in from all over the world. I see some from Italy. I see some from obviously here in the States. So everyone, welcome. I did see one question actually before we even started this one. This one is from Kelly, and she said her 5-year-old was asking if some of the astronauts watch movies on the International Space Station.
They do. We do like to equip them with some of the kind of creature comforts of being back here at home.
Cool.
And one thing they have up there is they actually have a very small projector and then a large screen. I think it's about 40 inches or so. Mm-hmm. And they'll have movie nights. And we do have a picture. And this is all 6 crew members. They use bungee cords to kind of make little lean-to hammocks and even breaking out their sleeping bags to gather together and watch movies in space. And a lot of them will tell you they like to watch a lot of space movies just because, I mean, they're up there, they're living it. But
sure.
It's just one of those things that kind of makes living in space a little bit more like being back here at home. Because, I mean, you're in a really strange place.
It's true.
And you're completely isolated from everybody except for the 2 or 5 people with you. So having things like movies can make that time a lot easier.
And it seems like camaraderie has got to be one of the more important aspects of living in space, too. Just getting along with your crewmates and doing stuff together. I guess they watch movies together, as we just saw in that picture, but I know they eat meals together, too.
Oh, yeah, they do. And they're together for years before they ever fly. They'll usually be you'll be with the same people pretty much throughout all of your work time for 2 years before you ever fly in space with them. So they know each other very well before they fly. Mm-hmm. Meals are definitely one of those things. So it's an international space station, so there's a lot of international foods. So they like to come together and share little creations. The food's not quite as gourmet as it might be down here on Earth, but they do have a couple of ways to make it a little bit more interesting. And they like to put hot sauces and things like that on a ton of stuff just because your taste actually changes when you're in space. And that's due to all the fluids rushing up and a whole bunch of crazy things happen. But
wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, if you have any more questions for Jack, just put them in the comment section. We'll kind of follow along, and even he's getting set up here right now. But once we start connect with him in just a few minutes here, we'll read those questions up to him. But personally, for me, I mean, besides just you reading his bio, this is the first time I've met Jack. The first time I'm actually going to be talking to him.
So Jack, highly recommend following him on social media. He's brought just an incredible amount of excitement to everything that he's been doing. And again, he's a first timer, so he's been experiencing all this for the first time and sharing it with people as he did. I actually got to meet Jack 3 years ago. We were both down in Florida for Orion's first space flight, EFT-1. It was the first time we put Orion, our next generation spacecraft, into outer space. And he was basically assigned to be our voice for the entire agency. So we went around talking to media, all of these different people to tell them about Orion. And again, he just brings like this level of enthusiasm. He's got a great sense of humor. He's incredibly knowledgeable. So he's going to be really great for this, the most awesome podcast from space today. So I'm super excited.
Absolutely. Appropriately named too. That's what we're going to be calling this episode. So we'll talk to him right now. This will be our live episode that we're doing here. You'll be able to interact with us live, but then it'll be available on iTunes, SoundCloud, and NASA.gov. The recorded audio version after this, I guess tomorrow we'll post it. So there'll be a full transcript with that as well.
All right now, we're 20 seconds away.
Oh, okay.
We're about 20 seconds away. Gary, are you ready? Are you ready to talk to space for the very first time?
I think so.
Are you ready? Okay, everybody, let's get ready for Gary. This can be a little nerve-wracking, I assure you, but just a couple of seconds.
Okay, so we'll wait for the call from Mission Control Houston here and start talking to Jack soon.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
I sure am.
JSC PAO, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Gary Jordan and Dan Hewitt here for Houston. We have a podcast. How do you hear me?
Loud and clear. Gary and Dan, great to be with you today.
Awesome. Well, I am extremely excited about this episode because as I was telling Dan here beforehand, this is usually when we have a guest, they're in the studio, let alone on the planet. So I'm going to start off this conversation by asking something that I literally cannot ask anyone else. How's life in space today?
It's awesome, like it is every day. And what I was going to do, just because, it is your first guest from space, every single question, I'm going to go on a different, wall. So I'll be on the walls, I'll be on the ceiling. I'm gonna adjust orientation mid-interview at every question just because I can, and it's cool.
I love it. Okay, awesome. So you're used to space now. You've been up there for, almost 4 months.
Yeah.
So, when you're going to be switching from wall to wall, do you sort of get disoriented, or is your body used to it at this point?
Nah, it kind of figured it out pretty quick. And, that's what's so awesome about the human brain. We come up here in a completely foreign environment, and the brain's just like, man, all this vestibular, all these things that I normally use to figure out which way's up and to orient this body for this dude doesn't work. So I have to find a different way, and it forces your mind and your body to grow and to look at things differently. So you start looking three-dimensionally at everything around you, and it's amazing how quickly your body can adapt and just get used to it. All right, that was question one. I got to switch now.
All right, well, why you do that? That just kind of leads into what is difficult to get used to when you get up there? Because, it's a completely alien environment from what we grow up and you spend your entire life experiencing. What's tough about it?
Absolutely. And, it totally depends on the person, and we can't really predict, even depending on your background. I come from a test pilot background and, can do things in an airplane that would make a billy goat puke, but that doesn't mean that when I get up here, I'm going to be any better than a scientist who's never been in a plane. It's not a good predictor. I was lucky, and when I got up here, I didn't have congestion or upset stomach or any of those big problems that some people deal with. But everybody has to learn how to fly, and so as a test pilot, I was probably worse than most because, most people find a way to, translate and fly from point to point and just be happy with it. But for me, every day I got to try something new. So I would really suck at it and run into stuff and hit myself into things. And that wasn't good. But then I'd get better. And then I'd try something more, or I'd try going faster, and it was like this cycle. So now I'm doing pretty good, but it was a long and bumpy road, and don't ask Peggy how many things I knocked off the wall.
We talked a little bit earlier. So you got Peggy Whitson up there, the space ninja, as you like to call her. Are there any crazy moves that you've broken out that she's looked at you and said, Jack, no, stop, don't do that again?
Oh my gosh, so many times. She has a patented look. It's the Two Fish, you are crazy look, and I pretty much got that down. When I get the Peggy Whitson Two Fish, you're crazy look, then I know, okay, that one I got to stop.
So, what have you learned? Now you've been in space with Peggy Whitson for this long. What have you learned from her that you sort of take with you? And then, I guess kind of off of that, what have you learned that really sort of annoys her that you really like to do?
Well, we're like two peas in a pod. We
Awesome.
Give each other a hard time all the time, so we tease each other a bunch. We have a good time. But I'm very... I just can't even say how lucky I am to have been on orbit with not only Peggy, but also Fyodor Yurchikhin, my commander and friend in the Soyuz and the commander of the station now. Those two have so much experience that I learn everything from them. They, not just the big stuff of how to organize your day and how to be efficient and those type of things, but even the little stuff. And I every time they're around, my eyes are wide open. You know, how is Peggy cutting her food packet? Because it's probably the best way, because she's done it quite a few times. So, you know, how is Fyodor holding his camera? What settings is he using for this task? It's to just watch them and just soak that in. Gosh, I am so lucky to have been up here with these two and just soak in all their goodness and knowledge.
And you've been working side by side with them for the last couple of months. Just walk us through real quick. What's just, you know, some of the stuff you're doing up there? Because it's a lot more than just flying and stuff like that. You're doing, you know, serious experiment work up there.
Oh, absolutely. The space station is just the most amazing world-class laboratory, floating around doing science all day, every day. We're doing science inside. We're doing science outside. Let me turn this off real quick. We're getting an echo, so I don't want you to hear me twice. That's way too much. So the space station, for example, when SpaceX 11 came up, it had 6 tons of science, mostly science on board, that then we had to bring on board, knock out that science, get it back on the SpaceX and back to Earth. That's the job of this place, is just rocking the science. We're doing not only stuff for human health and those type of sciences. There was a great experiment that Peggy was working on the other day with a new drug that actually targets cancer cells. We're growing lung cancer tissue, and it was doing some great work against the cancer. How cool would that be if we could crack the code of that horrible disease that, you know, even my daughter fell prey to? So not just those, we're looking just 10 feet from me is a machine called the ELF that's looking at new ways to create alloys that are lighter, that are stronger. I mean, this whole place, every square inch, is dedicated to either pure science or the systems that are going to keep us and those science experiments cranking away and getting great results back to Earth to help humanity, to make humanity better, and to enable us to explore and go further into the universe.
That sounds incredible. I'm sure, I mean, besides all the science, you have a lot of, I guess, I don't know about a lot of chances, but you do have the chance to sort of look out the window and see the Earth go by. So we do have a Facebook question from Wissal. How do we look from orbit? I don't know if whenever you're taking pictures of the Earth, I don't know if you can zoom down and actually get so close that you can start to see people, or are you that far up?
Well, we're pretty far up. If we had a bigger, lens, we could probably see you. But the bigger the lens, the smoother you have to be. Fyodor could probably do it. I can't do it. So the biggest that I've been using is an 800 millimeter lens, and we can get about to houses and see houses. So that's about as fine detail as what we can see. So we're not looking in your window and spying on you, I promise.
Well, that's good to know. But I'm sure, I mean, you're traveling so fast around the Earth, you get to see so much of it. Is there any sort of places on Earth that really stand out to you that you really like to either gaze at or kind of take pictures of? Because you see so much of it in a short period of time.
You bet. There are places that, kind of blew me away for sure. The first time I saw them, the Bahamas are the blue is just ridiculous. I don't even know. It's hard to believe it's real. One of Fyodor's favorite places is Kamchatka, which is kind of a little flange off the top end of Russia, and there's all these great volcanoes that are just incredible looking. So there's a lot of places that are wonderful, but what I've really tried to do, and it's probably why I don't have pictures of specific places like my hometown in Colorado, Louisville, or those places, is because I kind of go to the window and let God show me the tour, and I've never been disappointed. You could be flying over the Sahara, and you'll see these bright reds and, a mountain right next to sand or a sandstorm, and then you'll be in the Himalayas, and you'll see these incredible mountains. Every time I look out the window, I'm just in awe at how beautiful the Earth is. So my favorite place? Earth.
Oh, good answer. All right, well, your acrobatics are making a lot of people jealous, and we're actually getting a lot of questions about how to become an astronaut. So I want to switch gears real quick. So we've had a lot of news, a lot of stuff out there. We just hired a new group of astronauts, or new astronaut candidates that are going to be reporting soon. And one of my favorite things to talk to them about was when they got the call that they were going to come be an astronaut. But I don't know if you remember, but I was actually with you shortly after you got the call that you had gotten assigned to a mission. So I have to ask, which one was more exciting? You're going to be an astronaut, or hey, it's time to go fly in space?
Boy, that's tough. Probably that you're going to be an astronaut. Not because you take it for granted that you'll fly, but it's just once you're an astronaut, you got a real good chance that you're going to fly. Before that, and to become an astronaut, when people ask, how do you become an astronaut? Well, I'll give you the advice that my dad gave me, dare to dream. So only you can define your own dream, to find your passion, the thing that really makes you go. Because once you find that, you're going to work hard at it. And that's what the dare part is. Nobody's going to give it to you. You got to work really hard to make that passion and that dream a reality. But then there's one more part of it. And to become an astronaut, one of the biggest parts of it is just sheer luck, timing. And I am just lucky. There are tons of people more qualified than me that are better than me in every single way, but maybe that round of interviews they didn't apply, or they weren't in the right place in their life that they could apply. I just got lucky to be in the right place at the right time and be a part of an incredible group. So my advice for people who want to become an astronaut, find your passion so that you never work a day in your life. Work really hard at it. And then even if it doesn't work out because you weren't lucky at the right time to be selected as an astronaut, you're still doing what you love. And you're making a big difference on this planet.
Well, Jack, I don't think you give yourself enough credit. I think you're an extremely hard worker, and your passion is definitely reflected on everything that you do, and especially us. We really enjoy watching you on orbit. But for folks who want to become an astronaut, you can actually give them a sense of sort of what that feels like. And I know there's a lot of hard work and a lot of different things you have to learn, but there's also that element, that human element of being in space, of living in space. So I have a question just about, do you ever feel isolated? Do you ever feel away from things, or are you sort of connected? And then I have another question from Facebook from Kay asking if you have insomnia in space. They're two sort of related questions, not really, but that feeling of being in space.
Okay, I'm going to have to flip mid-question because that's really two questions.
Yeah,
so I'll do the first one quickly. The insomnia one, some people have a hard time sleeping in space. I don't. My back usually kind of hurts on the ground because I've been flying fighters for too long. But up here, I feel great. So it's like sleeping on an airbed because, well, I'm floating on air. So that's awesome. Okay, now I got to flip. Isolated. You do feel a bit, not because there's not connectivity with the ground. We can call via an internet protocol phone as well as video chat sometimes. And then we're in constant communication with the ground all throughout the day. As far as feeling isolated, sometimes you feel because everything you're doing is being watched. And I'm not talking about a podcast or posting on Twitter or any of those type of things. Everything we do as we're doing science and as we're doing activities is being watched by the control centers worldwide that are keeping this place running. And so you can kind of feel like, my gosh, because you're going to make mistakes. You can't go for 6 months doing, 12 hours a day and not make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. And sometimes you feel like, man, everybody is seeing everything that I'm doing wrong, like you have a bad day. That's when I break into my emergency coffee store and get another coffee pouch out so I can have some coffee, and then things get better.
All right. We only got a couple of minutes left, so it's time to get into some of the deep stuff, some of the deep cuts here. So you've been up there for a couple of months. Has just your perspective about everything, about life on Earth, about life in general, about your job, about all that, has being in space changed that?
Like, do you have the overview effect?
Yeah.
You do, because you get to see the world in this totally different light, this world without borders, one shared experience for everybody, and the beauty and just that thin blue line that is so frail that holds all life. Your perspective has to grow and adapt and change to that. But like I mentioned earlier, how quickly your brain adapts and grows, I think that perspective helps you grow as well. And that's why after this experience, yes, my perspective has changed, but it has really inspired me to try to get more people this experience and to get a permanent foothold in the stars for our species. I think we're on the verge of that. And with Orion and SLS, our new huge rocket, we're taking steps towards that, as well as a commercial industry, a burgeoning commercial industry that's building the infrastructure for us to press further into the galaxy. So my perspective change is that I want to do everything I possibly can to help the human species, humanity as a whole, go further and grow and evolve like I know they're capable of.
Amazing. It's just such an incredible perspective. I mean, looking down and just realizing kind of what we can accomplish. It's kind of amazing. But I guess from there, do you ever sort of miss Earth, or maybe even, I guess here's a question from Geraldine. You ever miss gravity?
Oh, sometimes. The other day I was doing a task, and my wrench pops off the bolt, and it goes flying off, and I'm like, no big deal, it'll hit the wall, it'll come back to me. And I look over, and there's this gap above the rack, and it's like an inch. And that wrench decided, I'm going to turn, so I'm perfectly in line with that gap, and it went floating inside, and then it was behind the rack and lost forever. Probably in 2 years, somebody's going to be cleaning an air vent and go, oh, hey, look, a wrench. I wonder where that came from. So there are some times you really miss gravity, but about 99.9% of the time, you don't.
All right. Well, I mean, first off, I just want to say I fully support your new perspective because I want to go to space. So, Jack, do everything you can to get me up there. So you're getting close to coming home. You're coming home at the beginning of September. Is there anything left on the list that you want to do while you're up there? Is there like a space bucket list before you come back?
There is, and it's such a huge list. You can kind of get overwhelmed by it. I want to picture this or that, or, I made a list, and I said I'm not going to add anything else to it. So I'm almost through it as far as the stuff I want to take pictures of or record or grab. And then I'm going to take all my spare time and just go down and grab a window or whatever and sit there and soak it up and just enjoy it and take a mental image so that I can fuel that passion. And when I come back to try to talk to people and get them excited about space, there's a big old well of passion inside me because I just sat there and plugged into the inspiration bar in the cupola. You look out, especially not just down at Earth, but out towards the stars, and it can't help but make you so excited that there's something else out there that we're going to go and explore, and I can't wait.
Wow. Just, Jack, this has been such an incredible few minutes with you. Thank you so much for actually taking the time to talk with us and to answer some questions from Facebook Live and to spend this time with us. Honestly, this is one of the best experiences of my life. If I had to pin it into a phrase, and this is just off the top of my head, I'd pin it as something like a triple-decker, fully loaded burger of awesome between two perfectly toasted awesome buns.
Nailed it. Nailed it.
That's just off the top of my head. But again, thank you so much for spending this time with me, and best of luck to you on the rest of your mission.
Well, thanks a lot. I'll try to say goodbye while I'm spinning. If I run into something, you can laugh. But thank you for letting me be a part of this, and I hope everybody that's in the podcast universe had a great time. Please, if you get excited about space, NASA.com, we have so many resources, so many ways that you can get engaged, whether you're a teacher, a student, just a guy on the street. Please check it out.
So incredible.
Station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event.
Thank you all participants with JSC PAO. We're now resuming operational comm.
All right. Wow.
Oh, man. So we just talked to somebody in space.
That was really cool.
That was really cool, right? How cool is that?
Wow. I really just appreciate his energy. You know, the life that he adds. It's not just like a conversation, this is what I'm doing. No, he's truly passionate about being in space and pressing forward on NASA's mission. It totally comes across in everything he does.
It's still surreal because, I mean, for everybody watching, you can see we were looking at Jack on a TV.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks like he's 5 feet away from us, when in reality, he's probably on the other side of the planet right now, flying around. And here we are talking to him. So it's so cool. Way to nail that closing. Way to nail the goodbye, Gary. I'm very proud
it was just
of you.
off the top of my head.
Just the top of your head.
Awesome. Well, honestly, you can. So everything. Honestly, Jack is a really cool person to follow on social media. If you ever go on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram, which you should, follow @Astro2Fish. That's his handle, right? He shares all these different photos of what he's doing, all the experiments he's doing, photos of Earth, and he's just super engaged in the mission. You can see everything he's doing there. Really an incredible thing to follow. If you just want to follow everything on the International Space Station, we have those too. @ISS, I think is, or @space_station.
There's a whole bunch of different sites you can follow. As he said, it's nasa.gov for pretty much everything NASA's doing. If you're interested in the space station, it's nasa.gov/ISS. We're all across social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Those names are all a little bit different, but it's all related to the space station. And we always like to get questions on everything. So use #AskNASA, and we'll get to as many as we can. And since I don't want to make Gary do his own shameless plug, Houston, we have a podcast. It's incredible. If you're ever wanting to go behind the scenes with the people that make human spaceflight happen, that's where you get it. You get the deep dives, you get the experts, you get the full thing, and I occasionally get to come in and do fun stuff like this. So
it's true. We've talked to some really cool people so far. You being one of them, of course, Dan.
I was the guinea pig.
But we have talked to 3 astronauts so far. We have just Jack Fischer today, but also Randy Bresnik, who's up in space right now. And we also got to talk to Shane Kimbrough like 2 days after he landed, and he gave that whole experience. But then we talk about the science, we talk about space food. We got a lot more cool episodes coming up, so stay tuned. You can find all of those on iTunes, SoundCloud, and NASA.gov, like Dan said. So I think that's going to wrap up, unless there's any more questions. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of questions, but we'll save those for. Actually, you could tweet @Astro2Fish. He might answer a couple of those for you. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today for the first live recording of Houston, We Have a Podcast. That'll do it for us here, and hope you keep listening to us in the future. If you have any suggestions on what we should put on the show, put it in the comments or use the #AskNASA. Thanks so much.